I never thought a simple house-sitting gig could make me question reality. The first night, I kept telling myself that. I've watched over plenty of houses before: water the plants, feed the cat, make sure the pipes don't freeze. Nothing extraordinary. This place was different though, even before anything actually happened. I felt it the moment I unlocked the front door. The key was heavier than I expected, turning in the lock with a grinding, reluctant twist, almost like the house itself was thinking twice about letting me in. It was a split level built in the late 70s, tucked away on a cul-de-sac at the far end of a neighborhood where the streetlights just sort of gave up. All the other houses had cars out front, glowing windows, TV chatter leaking into the night. But this one seemed to absorb sound, to swallow the faint hum of life, and give nothing back in return. When I stepped inside, the air felt thick, stale, like it hadn't been stirred in weeks. There was a faint, musty tang, old fabric and closed drawers, but also something else I couldn't place. I tried to shrug it off as I clicked on the hallway light, but the bulb was dim, throwing shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking at them directly. The owners, the McClellans, had left sticky notes everywhere. Please water ficus every other day. Don't run dishwasher until full. Mail slot in kitchen. It was almost comforting, all these reminders that real people lived here. I read them out loud to myself, just for the sound. When I checked my phone, the bars dipped to 1, then none. The Wi-Fi password on the fridge didn't work. Great, I thought. I'll be off the grid for the weekend. No big deal. I set my bag down in the guest room. The mattress was too soft, the sheets stiff with starch, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get through my checklist and settle in. As I moved around the house, every floorboard seemed to remember my weight, creaking even after I'd stepped away. I convinced myself it was just the wood settling, the way older houses sigh and shift. Still, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see somebody there. The first unnerving thing happened when I went to close the curtains in the living room. Out the sliding glass doors, the backyard pressed up against a strip of woods, black and impenetrable. As I reached to draw the curtains, I saw a faint glow, like someone striking a match, deep in the trees. It flickered, then disappeared. I told myself it was probably headlights from a passing car, even though no road ran that way. I finished closing the curtains, my fingers lingering longer than usual on the heavy fabric. Later, while making tea in the kitchen, I realized the fridge was humming a low, irregular note. Not the normal whir, but almost like a voice at the edge of hearing, trying out broken syllables. I leaned closer, half expecting to hear a song resolve itself, but it snapped back to regular humming as soon as I paid attention. I laughed, a little too loudly, and switched on the radio for noise. Static. Every station, nothing but shifting, whispery static, like the speakers were breathing. I turned it off. Before bed, I checked all the locks. The deadbolt on the back door stuck halfway, and when I tried again, the key twisted in my hand, biting into my palm. I caught my reflection in the door glass. My face pale, eyes too wide. I tried to smile at myself, but it looked wrong. I went to the bathroom instead, splashed cold water on my face, forced myself to breathe. The mirror was warped, reflecting the light in a way that made my features seem stretched and tired, like I had aged a few years in the span of an hour. I told myself I just needed sleep. One night, then 2 more, and I'd be done. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of dripping. Not a gentle, rhythmic tap, but something arrhythmic. Fast, then slow, pausing just long enough to make me think it had stopped. I lay still, listening. The house had its own language. Faint ticks from the baseboards, the subtle groan of the water heater, the murmur of wind pressing against double-pane glass. But this was closer, somewhere between the walls and my ear. I got up, teeth chattering in the chilly air. The thermostat was set to 68, but it felt far colder, as if the house was bleeding warmth into the woods outside. My socks made no sound on the carpet, and that silence only drew my attention to the persistent drip. I followed it into the hallway. As I moved, the shadows seemed to rearrange themselves, pulling away from the corners when I looked directly at them, then sliding back into place when I turned my head. The bathroom door was ajar, and light spilled in a crooked line across the floor, but I was sure I'd turned it off before bed. I pushed the door open, half expecting to find the faucet running, but everything was off. The sink was dry. Every tile looked slightly warped, as though the grout lines had begun to slant overnight. I tried to smooth my reflection in the mirror with my hand, but the glass felt oddly warm, pulsing gently under my fingertips. I jerked my hand back, heart caught high in my throat, and turned off the light. The dripping stopped. Back in the hallway, I noticed the sticky notes again. There seemed to be more than I remembered, one on the baseboard, another crookedly affixed to the doorframe. I bent down to read the one by my feet. The handwriting was smaller than the others, a hurried, jagged scrawl. "Don't open the basement." I hadn't even thought about a basement. None of the checklists mentioned it. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice sounded thin, artificial. I walked past the basement door on my way back to bed, refusing to look at the old brass knob. I forced myself to focus on the ordinary, the ticking kitchen clock, the faint hum of the fridge, the soft snore of the cat curled up in her bed. But even the cat seemed uneasy, her eyes following something I couldn't see, ears flicking at noises only she could hear. Somewhere in the early hours I drifted into a shallow sleep. I dreamed about the woods behind the house, tangled branches pressing against the windows, a faint glow weaving between the trunks. In the dream, something moved just out of sight, tall, impossibly thin, folding itself between the trees. When I jolted awake, the room was icy and silent, save for the faintest creak of floorboards in the hallway. I lay there, holding my breath, waiting for the sound to repeat. Nothing. Just the slow thud of my pulse in my ears. I must have imagined it. The next morning, sunlight streamed in through the blinds, making the house feel normal again. I almost laughed at myself as I stood in the kitchen, warming my hands on a mug of tea. Nothing was wrong. The radio, when I tried it again, spat out a garbled snippet of weather, just enough to prove it worked. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching me, or maybe listening. Every time I passed a window, I caught the faintest glimpse of movement outside, as if the view was lagging half a second behind my own eyes. The sticky notes seemed to multiply again. I found one stuck to the inside of the microwave, another wedged under the edge of my bedroom lamp. The instructions were stranger now. Don't answer if it knocks. No mirrors after dark. And scribbled on a torn scrap taped to the fridge handle, "Check if you remember the way out in the morning." I peeled that last one off, turning it over in my hands, half convinced I was being pranked. But the paper was brittle. The ink bled as if it had been there for years. I couldn't remember seeing it yesterday. Trying to shake off the crawling unease, I forced myself to follow the list, watering the plants, collecting the mail, feeding the cat. I startled when a neighbor rang the bell, their shape distorted in the wavy glass of the front door. But when I opened it, no one was there. Just the wind, curling dry leaves against the porch. I stood listening, thinking I heard footsteps retreating, but it might have been my own heartbeat. By the second night, the air inside felt denser, pressing against my skin. The cat wouldn't leave her spot by the window, tail twitching in agitation. At dusk, I closed every curtain tight, but I could still sense the woods beyond, closer somehow, like the trees had crept right up to the fence. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but I checked every lock twice. That was when I noticed the basement door was slightly ajar, a wedge of darkness spilling into the hallway. My hands went cold. I remembered the note, "Don't open the basement." I stared at the gap, a metallic, almost electrical smell pricking my nose. For a long minute, I watched, breath caught, waiting for a draft or a shadow or something. Finally summoning all my nerve, I nudged it shut with my foot and pushed a chair in front of it. I told myself it was just to be safe. That night, I woke to scratching. Not loud, more like fingernails on wood. A hesitant, searching sound, coming from under the floor. The cat sat upright, every muscle tense, eyes fixed on a spot by the bedroom vent. I whispered her name, but she wouldn't look at me. I pressed my ear to the floor. The scratching stopped. Silence stretched, thicker than before. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. That's when I noticed shadows pooling in the corners, darker and thicker than the night itself. I blinked, but they didn't shift away. Instead, they seemed to pulse, as if aware of being watched. My skin prickled. I wrapped myself tighter in the blanket, willing morning to come. But before dawn, something knocked. 3 slow, deliberate raps somewhere deep in the house. Then quiet. I squeezed my eyes shut, remembering the note. Don't answer if it knocks. I waited, every muscle locked, counting my breaths. The knock came again, closer this time. The cat hissed, a low, guttural sound I'd never heard from her. I reached for my phone. No service. The screen frozen on the time. 3:33 a.m. I stayed that way, unmoving, until the first light bled through the blinds. When I finally dared step into the hallway, the basement door was wide open. The chair had been dragged aside, leaving faint scrape marks on the floor. A cold, damp draft coiled up from the darkness below. I wanted to leave. Every nerve screamed for it. But my keys weren't where I left them. My bag was zipped, but empty. Every item gone except for another sticky note. Are you sure you're alone? My hands trembled. I went to the front door, but the deadbolt spun in circles, never catching. The windows showed the yard, but not my car, not the Noah.